Are you ready? And you can see the plant in front of me for a crawling philodendron review. This is a philodendron that a lot of people get because of the colour of its emerging leaves. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So today I'm going to be doing, I think, potentially an update review. This might be the second review for this plant. I think I've already done one. Pretty sure I have. If not, this might be the first review. For, some people might have guessed, like you can see the leaf here and it's almost fully hardened off. Before I go into, actually no, it's probably going to be on the title. It's going to be, can you guess? It's probably going to be on the title. So I will tell you. This is the Philodendron Lynamii. And I'll try to like lift it up so you can kind of see. This is going to be so awkward to film with this one. This is its newest leaf here, and it's kind of looking a bit browny at the moment, but you can see behind, again, it's kind of fading to the green color, which you can kind of see this is the previous immediate leaf, and it is green all over. This is the Philodendron Lynamii. And the Lynamii's leaves are the ones that come in like a pink color. And in my previous review, and I think I have done one, I did say that the pink was underwhelming. Do I still think that is the case? Yes and no. As it's maturing a bit more and I've got it into something that's growing a bit more happily, I would say that it's getting better. But before we get into any of that, let's dive into some background on this plant. So, background on this plant, and I think this might be the best way of me holding it because it is in a trough planter, so I'm going to have to put it on my hips. I'm going to be covered in soil and water, but you know what? That might be the best way to do it. And apologies for the leaves blowing in the wind, but I need a fan going because circulation and air circulation in here is highly important during these summer months. So yes, the Philodendron Lynamii and the background in it for me. So I think, as with a lot of people, the first time I'd ever heard of this plant, because I wasn't aware of it necessarily, first time I heard of it I think might have actually been Kaylee Ellen on here on YouTube. I don't think I had ever heard of it before, and I know some people might have already figured this out, but I like Kaylee Ellen, and I've always liked Kaylee Ellen. But it was a plant that she was getting, I think, in her rare plants store, and she was kind of talking a bit more about it at that point. And I think that's when it came to more people's awareness, and I think since then it's grown on its own. But never heard of it before, and I'm just like, oh, interesting that it went pink. I wasn't desperate to get this plant. I know there was a mad scramble to get this plant because of that pink. Anytime you see pink on leaves, for some reason, everybody loses their mind. But I was just like, it's okay. At that point I still didn't know. I'm just like, is it a climber? Is it a crawler? Because I think even the versions of the plant that she was showing, they were still quite juvenile, so they were quite close to the ground and they were in small pots. So I'm just like, is it? Is it not? I don't know. So I kind of left it there, didn't really think about it too much, and I'm just like, it's okay. And then I was doing an order, and I think this might have been another Ecuagenera order, or is this a Grow Tropicals order? I think this was an Ecuagenera order. And they had it available, and it wasn't massively expensive. It was a couple of years after the mad dash of everybody wanting it. And I'm just like, you know what? Throw it into the basket, see what happens. What's the worst that could happen? So that was kind of how it ended up coming into my care and how it ended up coming into my awareness. I would imagine, and my question to all of you is, how did you find out about the Lynamii? And did you find out about it recently? Is this something that you were aware of further back? It's an interesting one with the Lynamii because you don't hear about it quite as much these days, at least in my experience. But moving on to speed of growth for this one, I keep moving this leaf down so you can kind of see, but you can kind of see where the rest of the plant is. Speed of growth for this one is interesting because up until very recently I wasn't growing it in a trough container, I was growing it up. something. I don't even think it was a moss pole. I think it might have just been a janky support stick. And I think there was a lot of people that just went, we think it's a crawler. And I think I was struggling to find online whether or not this is a crawler or a climber, but I will say since putting it into a trough planter, it seems to have kind of found its stride. So speed of growth before that wasn't fantastic. It really wasn't. Like, I would say, okay, let's benchmark this the way that I usually do with my golden pothos. So I sound like a broken record again. If my golden pothos in this space, in the growing season, so spring, summer, on one vine will grow 2 to 3 leaves a month, how does this benchmark against that? I would say this in the growing season will grow a leaf in a month, roughly, possibly even less than that. But again, I can only judge it on the experience that I had when I was growing it up instead of along something, so in growing it as a climber rather than a crawler, and I do think this is a crawler, I think, based on what I'm seeing. So that might have been why, because if anybody's ever tried to grow a climber, because you didn't realize it was a crawler as a climber, you'll know what I mean. Like the leaves start to maybe get a bit smaller. This one, it didn't necessarily get smaller, but they weren't getting any larger. And it gets slower. And the moment that you move a crawler into a crawling position, so along the soil line and give it space to grow into a trough container, is the moment that you really start seeing the growth start to get a bit more intense, basically. So, and I think my first review that I did with that, and I'm just like, grow's really rubbish, blah, 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 blah. So, considering how quickly I went from this leaf, which was the first one when it was on its side crawling, which happened almost within like a couple of weeks of putting it onto crawling in a soil situation, and then a couple of weeks after this for this one, I would imagine that's the magic element that I was missing, is that I was growing it in the wrong direction. Instead of trying to grow it up, I should have been trying to grow it along. So where do I want to end with this? It's as long as you're growing it right, and I'm not saying that I am, I'm pretty sure, I can hear the comments already, some people down below going, it's a climber, what are you doing growing it as a crawler? But I'm just tried growing it as a climber, it didn't work. So as long as you're growing it in the way that it wants to grow, that's about as diplomatic as I can be with this one, then it might be faster. So based on just the growth that I've seen between these things, I would say about a leaf a month. When I was growing it the wrong way, it was maybe a leaf every 2 months, and almost entirely stopped in the winter. I also was giving this very bright and direct light because it's very top of my kind of shelving units behind the camera, which gets the most amount of light throughout the day. So I think that might have also slowed it down, because you can see the bleaching on the leaves is not a joke basically on this one. So yeah, I would say if you give it the right conditions, consistent towards slow for a philodendron based on my experience. Ease of propagation. I have not propagated this, but let me bring this around so you can kind of see it a bit clearer. So you can see that growing stem that is sitting there on top of the soil level in the pot, much like any other crawler. And as I said, I haven't propagated this, but I would imagine it's very similar to everything else. Yes, as long as you can take that cutting along that growing stem along the soil level, you should be fine, because actually every single node is touching the soil, so those aerial roots are actually becoming soil roots almost immediately. And it might involve you having to take out some of the soil mixture in order to do this, and then chop that and propagate it and move it somewhere else, and then you've got another one, or maybe you want to get a bushier plant in here, so you'll move the propagate in here. I would say relatively straightforward. As I said, I haven't done this. Please do let us know if you've tried this and I am talking rubbish, but I would imagine as a crawler, much like most crawlers, as long as you cut there and you've got some decent roots going into the soil level from that growing point there, then you should be fine. So yeah, easy propagation, relatively easy, I would say. Now, availability with this one, and I might put it down just for a second because my arm is getting very, very numb. Oh, I don't have the strength that I used to. Maybe I'll put it on the other side. There you go. You can still see the plant. There we go. In terms of availability, and this is the bit that I wanted to touch on in terms of kind of the awareness that I was talking about in the very beginning in the background section. So, is this, let's take it all the way back. When it was first coming to people's attention, was there a lot of them around? No. Were they expensive? Yes, they were definitely in the triple digits. I don't think it was ridiculous triple digits, I don't think, but it was definitely triple digits. When I bought this, was it triple digits? No, it was kind of mid to low double digits, so either Great British pounds or dollars, thereabouts. You're looking at between 20 to 30, 40, possibly 50. And this is when I imported it. So potentially if you're buying it from a local plant store, it might be a bit higher. It might be higher double digits, maybe just coming into the triples, I would guess here. And has the price dropped? Yes, from the very beginning stages where everybody was losing and going gaga over the the pink leaves on this, it definitely has reduced in price. There's a couple of reasons that I would guess with this one. If mine is anything to go by, and actually now that it's getting a bit bigger, these bigger leaves that are getting that kind of pinkishness when they're first coming out, that's a bit more impressive than what we were all promised in the beginning with this plant, is that it comes out and it's like a bubblegum pink. Yes, it does, but it's also slightly muddy, at least in my experience, when it's a bit more juvenile in terms of the leaf. When it gets a bit more mature like this, you get that more pink color for a longer period of time before it starts doing this weird color here. And I would say, again, based on my experience, this color stays for a lot longer than that bubblegum pink does. You're seeing this more than you will ever see the pink. So the reason why I'm saying all this, I wonder whether the availability has dropped because people, when they first got this, were just like, ooh, yeah, and then they realized really quickly it's actually, yes, it is pink, but actually what you're seeing a lot more of is this color, which maybe is what's putting them off, because very similar to the like Pink Princess, where it's like the Caca Princess, this tends to go a caca color for some part of its life, probably more of its kind of growing in stage than the pink is, at least in my experience. I know from the last review that people were saying that that's not the case. And again, I'll reiterate, because there was a lot of people going, if you don't want it, send it to me. And I'm just like, yeah, but no, I kept it. Look, I'm a bit happier with it at the moment. This is why I'm doing this review as an update. It's more like a bit of humble pie, actually. But yeah, it is that. So I think the prices have come down for that. Do I still think they're going to come down a bit more? Maybe a touch, but I don't think that would only get cheaper if there's a lot more people searching for it. So they need to get availability out there. And I don't think the interest in this plant has grown. If anything, it's probably either stabilized and it's gone down a bit more now. And that's the disinterest is probably what's bringing the price down. And it might just be that a lot of the growers that grew this in droves because they thought it was going to be a really, really popular plant realized, actually, people have lost interest. We've got quite a bit of this that we need to get rid of. There's maybe a steady stream of some people that are still interested in, so let's keep it at that price, but it probably won't go much lower than that. Coming into pests for this one, and depending on when you might see my September update video, because I did feature this in my September update video as well, you'll kind of notice that on that video, this specific leaf here had an awful lot, not an awful lot, but had some, sorry, the light is blowing it out as well a bit there, but you should be able to see there, had some spider mites. That is the word du jour for pests for this one, spider mites. Spider mite magnet, spider mite magnet. Absolutely insane how many spider mites I get on this. Have I ever seen any other pests on this? And as I mentioned in that video, I do have some thrips in my space at the moment, and I always, and the people that have been around, I've always got mealybugs in one way or another in this space. Neither one of those two really has attacked this plant. However, if there is even the whiff of warmth in the air and summertime and the time where like spider mites go absolutely bonkers in this space, this plant will get it, invariably. The one thing I will say is, do they damage the leaf super quickly and do they damage it a lot? No. So there is that. So it's still a leathery type leaf, and arguably the scariest point in this plant's life in terms of like spider mites is more at this stage where this leaf hasn't fully hardened off. And even then, having said that, this is still relatively leathery. So spider mites are going to be the big thing that you're going to be seeing on this, at least in my experience. So investing in some good predatory mite satchels, especially for spider mites, because those are the ones that I swear by. I know some people still ask me, what do you do for spider mites? Spider mites, for me, if I'm going to get a pest that is just not going to bother me in any way or form, it's spider mites. Ironically enough, when I was first starting off, I'm just like, spider mites, what am I going to do with the spider mites? And I don't have that arachnophobia issue that some people might have with spider mites. So I do understand that. But with this, it's just like, if I get spider mites on anything these days, I'm just like, it's all right, I'll treat it, it's okay. And invariably it's fine, it will be fine. If I don't end up killing all the pests during the growing season, the cold will in here, it's fine. In the winter, it's fine. But yeah, like spider mites are going to be the big thing on this one. So keep an eye on it, keep on top of it if you want. But yes, I think that's everything I wanted to say about pests. Now, coming into accessories and care for this one. Biggest thing I could recommend. Trough planter. Trough planter. Yes. Trough planter for this one, because again, in my experience, I think this is a crawler. And the moment that I put it into crawl is the moment that it's doing a lot better. Now, I have given this insanely chunky soil mix, and that is the Anthurium soil mix from Soil Ninja. And it's annoying that I watered this yesterday, so it is super heavy at the moment. But that soil mix is another thing that I want to talk about in care. I don't remember if I had this in semi-hydro, I might have done at some point, but I will say by and large, for most of my crawlers, and other people might have entirely different kind of ideas on this. I think even Kaylee Ellen, when she shows her shop, I think she grows a lot of her crawlers in semi-hydro, I think. I find that my crawlers do a lot better in the soil mix. They do not do as well in a semi-hydro mix. For whatever reason that might be, I would imagine if something is used to growing along the jungle floor, and yes, that can still be quite airy, and it's not something that's necessarily an epiphyte, it might still be an epiphyte. I don't know how you would class that as an epiphytic. So is it epiphytic because it's... I don't know if it is epiphytic, if it's a crawler. I might be wrong on this one. I'm sure you all will correct me down below. But I see those two things as very different. What my concept is of an epiphyte is something that's more of a climber, because it's growing on something, epiphytic. So in Greek, it's epi is upon, phyto is plant, so upon a plant. Epiphytic would be the climbers that are climbing up, which really do want a lot of aeration, especially near their aerial roots. With this, because it's used to going into more of a soil mix, granted it does need to be chunky still, I find that a lot of the crawlers, because of that nature to crawl and it's used to being on the ground and it's a bit more damp, they tend to do that. They don't necessarily want to be sapping wet, that's a different story altogether, but I do find that they do better for me in soil mixes invariably. The last crawler that I've got that's in semi-hydro, and it's surviving is the best thing I can say, is the Philodendron Lynamii, and it constantly has issues. I do need to move that into soil, I just don't have space for another crawler in here. But yes, that would be the two big things on this. Is this a very heavy feeder? Not massively. I was talking before about light when this one was getting bleached out, so don't give it too bright of light. I would actually say I think this one does better in bright indirect towards bright medium light, if that makes sense. But other than that, it seems to be okay. In terms of humidity, do I think this needs high humidity? Probably not. I have never grown this outside of here, so I cannot talk from experience. But for most of my crawlers, as long as you're good with their watering, and this one's also got leathery leaves, like if you can compare this to something like a Philodendron gloriosum, which has got the velvety leaves, and even that can do okay. I've seen it do really relatively okay in household humidity. I would imagine this is okay in household humidity, as long as it doesn't get super dry, basically. But yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to say in terms of accessories and care. 100% I am putting this down now so I can actually talk a bit easier, but I've angled it so you can kind of see at least the back of the new leaf, yeah? You can see the coloration there. But final thoughts on this one. And it's interesting, I'll start off with where I usually kind of benchmark this, and I can't remember exactly what score I gave this on my previous review, but I don't think it was a particularly favorable one. That has changed. But in terms of my usual question to myself, knowing what I know now, if I didn't have this plant, would I purchase this plant? And this one I don't think has massively changed. Maybe it has from my original review, because I think my original review I said no. Would I get this? Maybe. It doesn't excite me. I almost hated it in the previous video. Like, I really was not enjoying it. I'm enjoying it a bit more now. Like, is it setting my world on fire? No. Is it a funner plant to grow now that I've kind of figured out what it needs to be a bit happier? Yes. So it depends. Maybe if I had more space and I could really grow it properly like a crawler and not have to worry about space for a middling type plant for me, probably yes, I would get it at that point if I had more space and it wasn't that expensive. Yeah, I mean, I'd probably get it. It's an interesting looking plant. But would I go out of my way, and if I didn't have any space, like I really don't anymore, to get it? Probably not. So it depends on the situation, really. Now, in terms of a score from this one, from 0 to 10, 0 being the worst, 0 or 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, this is definitely not a 10. A 5 or a 6, and I think last time I might have given it a 3 or a 4. Might have even been lower than that. But 5 or a 6, it's come up. It's come up in a year. So I think I've grown this now for 2 years, potentially, I think. I can't remember. Possibly, yeah, possibly 2 years. But it has come up, and it's still, yeah, I'm even trying to find things to kind of make it. Would I give this up now? No, I wouldn't have given it up back then, but no. It's okay. It seems to be a steadier grower. I'm getting a bit more of that pinkish vibe more now that it's got more mature leaves. Was I missing the trick with the right growing media and the right container and all of these things? Possibly. So this might be an interesting one for me to do a review again in a year's time and see if I do eventually fall in love with it now that it's going to be hopefully growing more consistently. Is the pests that annoying? And that's probably why I'm cutting points off, because it bleaches out more than any other philodendron would in slightly higher light, faster. It does have the spider mite issue. It's a crawler, which to me will always get a slightly lower score from my point of view, because crawlers for me just demand a lot of space, both long-wise and wide-wise, and I do not have the space in here. If you do, that's great. This might be one for you. But yeah, I don't think I can give it more than a 5 or a 6. As I said, it's a very middle-of-the-road score for this one, but I think that's the best that I can do for it for right now. I am very curious to know, do you own this? Have you owned this? Are you planning on getting this? What have your experiences been? Did you know of some of the things that I've talked about in this video or the previous review? How does it all stack up with your kind of reality of what this plant is or might be? Very, very curious to find out down below. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.